we've heard very different positions on this from like Hakeem Jeffries, Jon Stewart, which is how much should we be raising hell? And where? How targeted should it be versus how broad based? And so Hakeem Jeffries is of the very old school Democrat, if we got to keep our powder dry for sometime in the late 3000s or whatever. And Jon Stewart, even at least a couple weeks ago, was saying, we can't freak out about everything. And I agree about that. But if things are happening every day that seem freak outable, then it seems like, does it make sense to cede that ground, to not lose it over that? And I guess the reason I'm asking you this question is, it's both a question that we need to know how the Democratic leadership is going to, like, are they going to protest? Are they going to, around all these issues? But you guys have to decide at Move On, like, what are you gonna do protests over? What are you gonna do campaigns over? Is it a Muslim ban? Do we do it for banned books? Like, what do you think in terms of how broad should our outrage or attempting to get people fired up over this be? How targeted should it be?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, at Move On, one of our jobs, one thing that we need to do, and I'd argue every leader that has any position of power needs to do, is educate folks around what's happening. I think part of the challenge we have at this moment, which is not the same as when Trump was in office in the first time. Part of the challenge we have is information is so dispersed. There is no one source of truth anymore. There are people in complete bubbles and information like vacuums, so there is no shared sense of the threat. We have base Democrats and progressives who are highly alarmed, and we have an entire additional set of folks that are either checked out or overwhelmed and not sure what to do. And our job is to like sound the alarm, and that's what we want to see from whether it's organizations like Move On or elected leaders. We need everyone sounding the alarm, and then in a way that compels people to join us and that doesn't position us as like hair on fire crying wolf, and that's the challenge, because Donald Trump says 10 things and he does 7 of them, and you don't know which one's real. So, tariffs on week 1 was a big deal, and then he backtracked on Canada and Mexico. So, but I think like being able to bring people along with us when we talk about the threats and what Donald Trump and Elon Musk are trying to do is super important. And I think that's kind of the space we're in right now. But I know that as soon as these cuts start impacting people, if they're successful, we're gonna see a mass unrest around what this administration is trying to do.
Yeah, I mean,
continue.
Oh, go ahead, John.
No, feel free.
I guess, yeah, I'm curious about also like broader vision. I know that's not necessarily what Move On does, and I feel like the rapid response is so necessary and so great. But I am also curious in terms of maybe 2 questions around vision and community, right? So much of what the right offers is a very clear vision of a white Christian ethno state. Like it's a very terrifying vision, but it's super clear. Let's hollow out the government. Everyone's a bureaucrat. So what is that counter vision of how we actually say, no, government can be and is good, and it's made up of people? And then in addition to that, an identity, right? Sort of a place of belonging, right? Like, does Move On work with churches or faith groups or schools or anything? Like, how are you all deepening as well, as we see that so much of what the right offers is like kind of this like political home, even if it's just among a bunch of trolls?
Yeah. I always say the job of the right is way easier than the job of the rest of us. Totally. It's easy to scapegoat people, to lay blame, and to project yourself as a protector from those scary, scary folks. And I think that's what they're doing. And when you have no morals and you're not trying to build a society that works for everybody, their job is easy peasy. Ours is hard. We're actually trying to build a democracy that functions and responds to the needs of the people within the context of a capitalist society. Like, right. That is not a joke, and that is not easy to do. And I would argue capitalism is the reason kind of we got here where we are today. But plenty of folks have a vision. I think that the most promising vehicle for a vision is a candidate. And I think organizations, MoveOn has one. We want to build a country where everyone can thrive, where people are welcome, where we take care of one another, where there's honor and dignity for every human being. That's a wonderful vision, but there is no candidate that's proselytizing that. That's not building a brand, that's building an identity that people can resonate and respond to. So I really think we need to be looking towards 2028 and who are the future presidential nominees that we want to get behind and stoke and nurture and move forward with. And that we cannot take 2028 lightly. We have to take that very seriously. We can't be in the same position where we don't have a choice in who that nominee is. And we should be thinking about who should we be encouraging to put their hat in the ring.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And my big fear, it's the same sort of fear, only elevated, that I had the first time around is, a lot of progressives are like, they're stinging because of the loss, like that we could have had, someone better, theoretically. And now it's gonna be really bad. So maybe the silver lining is people will be crying out for something much better. But maybe they'll see Joe Biden as significantly better than a continuation of what they'd had for 4 years. Like, that's my fear is, sure, maybe this leads to them wanting, an AOC or something, or maybe Gavin Newsom looks 1,000 times better than 4 more years of JD Vance or Tucker Carlson or whatever. So that's my
that's kind of what happened in 2020, I would argue.
Yeah,
that's what I was referencing before with Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Like, all of a sudden, Joe Biden, I guess, looks pretty good when 3,000 people a day are dropping dead from COVID. So that's sort of my fear. Members make a difference here at TYT. You help make the show happen, and we see you in the chat with your loyalty badge. Click the join button to become a member today.